Canada today, you can't open a meeting without acknowledging the territorial sovereignty of Indigenous people. So it's kind of weird to me that in a rich country like this, the poorest people in our society are the traditional owners of this land. Something doesn't compute, and I think in the 150th anniversary of Canada, it's time to right this obvious wrong. I know there are a few media here tonight, and it obligates me then to say that I'm not here to speak on behalf of any organization or any group. I am here tonight to speak as a citizen, to speak as a grandfather, and as an elder. We are at a critical moment in all of human history when big decisions have to be made. They have to be made by those we elect to lead us, who must show they understand what these issues are. We never get enough democracy, and it is absolutely urgent today that we act as responsible citizens and inform our so-called leaders what our priorities are, and then demand that they act. They are our servants, and they act on our behalf. And I see this wonderful audience here. If you believe and support what you're going to hear tonight from Andrew and what you've heard from Yonina, I beg you, I plead with you, each of you go out and talk to at least 3 people and recruit 3 people out there. You must all know that many people who will come and vote for the Green Party. We never get enough democracy. As a grandfather, I am acutely aware that the world of my childhood no longer exists, and that my generation and the boomers who followed leave a radically degraded world to our children and grandchildren. And as an elder, I believe that this is the most important stage in my life. You see, I'm freed from having to worry about a job, a promotion, a raise. I don't have to care about that. I don't have to worry about fame or power or even sex. I'm too old for that now. So I don't have any of that impinging on my life. I can speak the truth from my heart. And if that offends people, that's their problem, not mine. And like all elders, I've lived an entire life. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've suffered failures and had a few successes. Those are hard-won life lessons that as an elder, I feel it's my obligation to sift through the life for those nuggets of experience to pass on to coming generations. So I urge my fellow elders, for God's sake, get off the couch or get off the golf course and get on with the most important part of our lives. You see, we stand at a critical moment in all of the history of life on this planet. Human beings have become so powerful. We are now the major factor shaping and altering the physical, chemical, and biological properties of the planet on a geological scale. That's an amazing, there has never been a species as powerful as we are today. That's why scientists now call this the Anthropocene epoch, the age of humanity, when we are, in this moment of geological time, the major shaper of the properties of Earth. Not long ago, we referred to hurricanes and floods, storms and drought and earthquakes, fires, as acts of God or natural disasters. But they aren't anymore. We've taken our place with the gods. The human imprint is there for these events that are now occurring in a world of climate chaos. But we don't know enough about how the world works to apply our enormous powers wisely, and thus in the pursuit of economic growth and the attitude that the economy becomes a criterion for how we live on this planet in progress, we are degrading the very life support systems through the economic system that we've developed. Greens understand this very, very well. And that's why I support the Green Party of British Columbia. I was born in 1936, when the global population was just over 2 billion people. Can you imagine? In the lifetime of a single individual, the population of the planet has more than tripled. And every addition to the world must be fed, clothed, and sheltered. And that gives us, collectively, an enormous ecological footprint. It takes a lot of air, water, and land to support us as a species. But unlike rats or rabbits or mice, we make a much greater demand on that ecological footprint. In the past century, we've witnessed the explosive growth of technology that now enables us to search the entire planet for raw materials, to provide products for a global population, which has been afflicted with a huge appetite for stuff. We love to go and shop, and that's now driven, our consumptive appetite is driven by a global economy. Everything that we acquire, we use up and throw away, comes from and returns to the earth. And when you add together the impact of our numbers, our technology, our consumption, and our global economy, you see why we have become such a powerful force on the planet. We are undermining, though, the very things that keep us alive. And if anyone was more qualified to tell us, there is no one in Canada more qualified to tell us about the changes than Andrew. We have now changed the chemistry of the very atmosphere we depend on. We are at a level now of carbon in the atmosphere unprecedented since what? How many millions of years? Millions of years in the past. We have created that atmosphere, and because as Greens we know we live in a world where everything is connected, the repercussions of that change in the atmosphere's chemistry has been enormous. Just on the surface, the interface between the air and the water, carbon dioxide dissolves as carbonic acid. The pH of the oceans is dropping because of our change in the chemistry of the atmosphere. And the impacts we're seeing already enormously. I have been urging for years Indigenous communities along the coast to get into shellfish aquaculture, because shellfish are a very effective way of removing carbon and making shells out of them. So you've really sequestered the carbon in the shells. But the shellfish, with that pH change, are having a difficult time growing now. And a lot of shellfish farms are going out of business because they're losing the young oysters and clams. The impact of the change in the chemistry of the atmosphere on the land is enormous. And if any province knows about the impact, it should be British Columbia. We have a natural parasite of pine trees in British Columbia called the mountain pine beetle. And it has traditionally been kept in check by winters. If we have a run of cold weather, we destroy much of the population year after year. But of course, we're not getting the winter cold that we've depended on in the past. And so there's been an explosion of mountain pine beetles that have essentially devastated the pine forests of the north at a cost of tens of billions of dollars to British Columbia. But now the population of insects has been so huge, they've actually blown across the Rocky Mountains and are now into the boreal forest of Alberta and soon right across the entire planet. Our glaciers are disappearing, ice caps melting, and the landscape changing enormously. So we face an existential crisis in the human relationship with the planet. And our political system, as it presently stands, simply isn't dealing with it. And that's really why we need Yonina and Andrew and many of the others that are here today to become a part of our government. And In part, our problems, our inability to deal with the reality of ecological devastation reflects the fact that we don't start, all of the parties don't begin with a platform of agreement. We don't begin by saying, what are the most fundamental needs in society that we all agree must be protected at all costs? Because those primary needs then set the direction of how we achieve certain goals. Greens are often dismissed as a single issue party. I'm sure you get that all the time. Oh yeah, the environment's their only issue. As if somehow the environment is a special interest like ballet or sports or music. But what is the point of debating pipelines or dams or the tar sands or supertankers on our coast if we don't all begin with an understanding of what our society is based upon and what the foundation of our society really is? Surely that agreement is required before we begin to debate these issues. And before the Greens became a presence, none of the political parties really confronted the reality I'm going to tell you about now. The reality is we live in a world that is shaped and constrained by laws of nature, and there's nothing we can do about it except live within those laws. Physics tells us we can't build a rocket that will travel faster than the speed of light. And nobody objects to that. There's nothing you can do about it. That's the ultimate limit to what our technology can do. The law of gravity says if I trip on a rock, I'm going to fall on my face. There ain't nothing you can do about it. You live with gravity. And the first and second laws of thermodynamics tell us you cannot build a perpetual motion machine. Those are all dictated by physics, and we live within the constraints of that physical world. Chemistry, it's the same. The atomic property of the elements that dictate the boiling and melting points of different elements, that tell us about the diffusion constants and reaction rates. These are all laws of chemistry that we live with and that dictate the kinds of atoms that can be combined in a test tube and the kinds of molecules that we can synthesize. And there's nothing we can do about that. Those are dictated by the atomic properties of the elements. And in biology, it's the same. Biology tells us that every species of plant and animal has a maximum number that can be achieved within an ecosystem or habitat that is dictated by the carrying capacity of the ecosystem or habitat. Exceed that number and your population will fall. Now humans always say, well, yeah, but we're not like other animals or plants. We're smart, we adapt to different environments. It's true. We're not limited to an ecosystem or habitat, but the fact is we live within the constraints of the biosphere, the zone of air, water, and land where all life exists. And the biosphere can't grow, it's finite, and there is a carrying capacity within the biosphere for our species. Of course, with humans, the carrying capacity is determined by two factors. That's not just our population, but our consumption per capita. And in the countries like Canada, it's the consumption that gives us a very big population equivalent. The per capita consumption is very, very high in the super consuming countries. But every scientist I've talked to agrees with me that collectively humans have exceeded the carrying capacity of the biosphere. That is, we cannot sustain the numbers that we're at. People get really angry at me when I say that. They say, look at the stores, look at our people, we're living longer. What are you talking about? I say, yeah, we're doing it at the cost of our children's future. Just ask any elder what it was like when they were young, and they'll all say the same thing. Oh, it used to be so different, you know? Like, we're using up our children's rightful legacy as if economic growth is the most important thing in our society. So, humans, like all other species, have a number that can be sustained indefinitely, and we're past that number today. Human beings are, biology tells us, animals. And I gave a lecture in Austin, Texas in the 1990s. Big, there were 3,000 people in the audience, a lot of kids in the audience. I said, now kids, if you remember one thing, remember we are animals. Man, did their parents get pissed off at me. Woman came up, don't call my daughter an animal, we're human beings. I said, madam, if your daughter isn't an animal, is she a plant? Because we're either a plant or an animal. And as animals, what is our most fundamental need?
Water.
Reproduce. Our most fundamental need is a breath of air. If you don't have air for 3 minutes, you're dead. If you have to breathe polluted air, you're sick. So surely everyone would agree that clean air is the highest priority, the highest gift from nature that we receive, that should be protected at all costs. Clean air is the very source of our life and well-being. And then, every one of us is 60 to 70% water by weight. We're basically a big blob of water with enough thickener added. We don't dribble away on the floor. But you know, the problem is the body leaks water, right? It comes out of our skin and our mouth and our eyes and our crotch, and we lose water all the time. So we have to top up. And if you don't have water to top up with for 4 to 6 days, you're dead. If you have to drink polluted water, you're sick. So surely everyone would agree, clean water, like clean air, is our highest priority and value. And then we can go a lot longer without food, but 4 to 6 weeks without food and we die. Most of our food grows in the soil, so clean food and soil should join clean water and clean air. And finally, every bit of the energy in your bodies and mine, every bit of that energy that we need to work and move and grow and reproduce is sunlight. Sunlight captured by plants in photosynthesis, converted then into chemical energy that we store in our bodies. And when we need that energy, we burn it. And we liberate the energy of the sun back out. So photosynthesis should be there with clean soil and food, clean water and clean air. And that, I believe, should be the foundation on which all parties agree. Those have got to be the highest priorities. And then we can talk about how we live and how we achieve an economy. We're not doing it the right way. We've let the economy dominate everything. And the economy is degrading those very things that are the foundation of the way that we live. To me, the miracle of life on this planet, recognizing those, what indigenous people call the 4 sacred elements, earth, air, fire, and water. Those 4 elements, critical to our well-being and our health, are cleansed, replenished, and renewed by the web of life on earth. It's all of the green things in the oceans and on land that created the oxygen-rich atmosphere we depend on. To this very day, they are what generate the atmosphere. When it rains, soil, tree roots and fungi and plant roots and bacteria filter the water. In Vancouver, we get our water from 3 watersheds surrounded by old-growth rainforest. We don't have to do a thing to it. Nature filters that water for us. And of course, every bit of our nutrition that was once alive. We take the carcasses of plants and animals in our mouths, tear them apart, and incorporate them into our bodies. And most of our food was grown in the soil, and guess what? Soil is created by life. You know, this is why it's so ludicrous to think that people want to establish colonies and inhabit Mars. What a ludicrous idea. First of all, there's no atmosphere there, but there's no soil even to grow food, because soil is created by life. So to me, this is the foundation of the way we have to live, recognizing the 4 sacred elements that to me should be sacred, and that life itself, the web of living things, helps us by delivering the 4 sacred elements. Biodiversity then joins earth, air, fire, and water. Once we acknowledge, this is where, to me, the Green Party begins then with the understanding of those sacred elements. And we've got to, the reason why I think the Greens are so important is we've got to keep putting that back on the agenda. Some of you may have heard Andrew for an hour on Rick Clough's morning show. Here we have the most eminent scientist. We have the most eminent scientist who gave up a career in science and teaching to become a politician because of the issue of climate change and the environmental degradation. And Rick never asked him a single question about climate or the environment. Is that an issue so irrelevant that he doesn't ask? Or is it because he knows that the Greens already know that stuff? If he does, then he better drill down on Christie and Horgan and find out what their position is then on these fundamental issues. Once we all agree on what the foundation of the way we live is, that must be protected above all else, then we can ask, how do we live and make a living? Then we can debate the fate of the tar sands, pipelines, dams, and coal ports. Christy Clark tells us that people like me are the forces of no. I embrace that. I embrace that with pride, but she doesn't know how to spell. I am of the forces of no, spelled K-N-O-W. By failing to acknowledge the constraints imposed by the laws of nature, we elevate things we've created above them. When Stephen Harper said over and over again, we can't afford to do anything about climate change, it'll destroy the economy. He's now elevated the very economy above the atmosphere that gives us weather, climate, and our lives. This is just nuts. The economy is a human construct. How dare we think it is the most important thing? Yet in all of the discussions that will go on leading up to the election, you can bet the economy is the dominant issue that all of our pundits and everybody are going to be discussing. We also draw lines around our property, around our townships and municipalities and provinces and countries. And boy, do we take those lines seriously. We will kill and die to protect these lines. But you know what? Nature couldn't give two hoots about the lines that we draw. You know, when Chernobyl happened, it was Swedish scientists who detected that there was a spike in radioactivity because air doesn't stay within national boundaries. Do you think the salmon born in British Columbia, rivers that go through the Alaskan Panhandle and up the coast of Alaska, think they're American fish or that they're Canadian fish? They couldn't care less. And then there are other things, concepts like capitalism, the economy, the market, corporations. These are not forces of nature, but by God, if you read the financial pages, you would believe there's some kind of entity. Oh, market's not looking too healthy today. You know, and you think, what the hell is this sitting there with an ice pack on his head going, oh man, I feel shitty today. Like, what are we doing? Everything is, oh, we gotta serve. You know, the economy was a construct to help people. But suddenly we're left saying, you've got to sacrifice for the sake of the economy. What the hell is going on? The economy was constructed for us. We're constantly trying to force nature to conform to our human constructs. You know, oh, fishing is going down. Okay, you can take more fish. That's okay. You know, or oh, they're having problems with the forest industry is in trouble. Well, you can cut down more and ship raw logs out of here. We always ask nature to help us out, to feed these human constructs. And yet what we've got to learn is some things are beyond our manipulation and that we have to live in a way that conforms to the needs of nature itself. And that's what the Green Party understands, and that's why I'm here to support them. And thank you all for coming out.